Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. It's me and Mark back in the studio and we'll be talking all about AI overviews. We'll be ranting, we'll be raving, we'll be discussing all the latest updates and confusing updates from Google and various people. All that coming up on this week's episode. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. I am Jack Chambers-Ward, I am one of your co-hosts and I am joined by Mark Williams-Cook.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Candour studio. We've got a hot topic this month. I feel like we say that every month, but this feels particularly spicy. And it feels like it's been building up to it for a very long time because we've been talking about SGE and generative AI and AI policies and all kinds of stuff for what feels like a decade at this point. And now we're finally actually here. AI overviews have launched.
Welcome to the world of tomorrow.
Why do you always have to say it that way?
It's a little thing called showmanship.
It's the year 3000. It certainly feels like it sometimes. And yeah, Mark and I will be talking about all the latest news. If somehow you're living under a SEO rock and have not seen AI overviews yet, you've not seen a lot of people complaining about it on Twitter and LinkedIn, we'll get to all of that stuff. We'll get our opinions, our thoughts, predictions for the future and all that kind of stuff around AI overviews. Before we get to that though, here is a word from our sponsor, Wix Studio and AlsoAsked. The first sponsor for this week's episode is AlsoAsked. You can go to alsoasked.com and check out this fantastic and unique intent research tool. As we probably already know, search intent is at the core of everything we do as SEOs. Even if you're not directly working in content, understanding what your users are trying to achieve through their searches is still pretty important. I think we can all agree. On top of this, Google has told us that it takes up to 9 searches for users to complete their goals. This can be a pretty hard picture to capture, to be honest, with traditional keyword research tools. So what if you could get hold of up-to-the-minute questions that users have asked that have been clustered by intent by Google themselves? Well, that's exactly what AlsoAsked actually does. AlsoAsked mines and organizes Google's People AlsoAsked data in real time, showing you the next most likely question your searchers are going to ask. Best of all, it's completely free. You don't even need to create an account to try out AlsoAsked. Of course, if you do find it useful, there are paid options as well. We have the free, we have the light, and we have the pro options in terms of accounts that you can subscribe to. At the touch of a button from these accounts, you can download not only the questions people are asking, but also the answers Google has selected, the website URLs, and the titles that are ranking for those answers as well. AlsoAsked has the world's only API for People AlsoAsked data, meaning you can combine this data you're pulling from whatever questions you're asking directly into tools. You can combine it with things like ChatGPT to really supercharge your content briefs and transform the way you write content at scale. Go to alsoasked.com and check out this fantastic intent research tool today. Our sponsor for this week is Wix Studio, the web platform that gives agencies and enterprises the end-to-end efficiency to design, develop, and deliver exactly the way they want. Whether you manage 10 sites or 1,000 sites like some agencies do, here are a few things you can do from start to finish in less than 2 minutes on Studio. You can set up native marketing integrations with Google, Bing, and more in just one click. You can save so much time by reusing custom templates, widgets, sections, and design libraries across all of your sites, instead of having to build them from scratch each and every time. You can easily create seamless handovers by adding tutorials, guides, and more to your client dashboards. And speaking of dashboards, you get a full 360 view of all of your projects from one workspace with total control. And whether you're working your site with fellow SEOs, developers, other marketers, you're able to work on the same canvas at the same time with all of your team members. And of course, you'll be able to leverage some of the best in-class SEO defaults such as server-side rendering and automated structured data markup across all of your Wix sites. That is time up, I'm afraid, but the list keeps on going. Step into the Wix Studio by clicking the link in the show notes or the video description down below and see for yourself. Thank you so much to Wix Studio for sponsoring us here at Search with Candour. let's dive in. Let's delve in. Is it delve?
I was just
going
going
to
to say, you started
Yeah,
that
yeah.
literally like Chat GPT.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the word. Is it dive in or delve? Where it's like the number of uses of the word delve have exponentially increased in people's homework and stuff like that. Let's deep dive and delve into the topic of AI overviews, because oh boy, has it got off to a hot start. I believe a couple of people I spoke to, shout out to Natalie Arney. Nat's awesome. Go and check out Nat's awesome SEO stuff. She has a fantastic guide to Brighton that I've used many times when going to Brighton SEO. So if you're planning to attend Brighton SEO later on, follow Nat. She's awesome. I'll put links for those in the show notes if you're watching on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. Nat mentioned she experienced her first AI overview last night.
Ooh.
An actual in the UK real life example.
Yeah, I've heard of a few people in the UK starting to get them when they're logged in now.
It's blown my mind. I've tried it so many times. I replicated the exact search as Nat texted me, like, "Oh, am I trying to replicate it exactly?" Nope, nothing at all. No. I have tried it multiple times.
Not for you.
I know, right? Yeah, and I realized, like, oh, I'm trying to do it on my desktop as well. I was like, well, I'm logged in on my work account, which is a different thing because it won't let you do certain things. So I was like, okay, I'll try my personal account. Still didn't work. I tried it on my phone. I tried it on my laptop on Chrome. Nothing. No AI overviews for me so far. I'm just having a bit of FOMO. Have you experienced it yet? Have you seen it in the wild?
Not in the wild in the UK. I'm actually not that excited about it. I mean, especially looking at the feedback, right?
Yeah,
that we have seen, which has been colourful.
Certainly, yeah. Usually we try to keep this podcast as like safe for work and family friendly as possible. Unfortunately, people on Twitter disagree with that, and I know we've said things like "my ass hurts," and there's been a couple of shits here and there throughout the years. But yeah, this is a lovely little I don't know, collage, shall we say?
Mosaic.
A mosaic, thank you, of people pissed off on Twitter. Built by the one and only Lily Ray, because of course it was. Lily has done an amazing job of just summarizing everybody's hate-filled posts on Twitter, including things to the exact opposite of what to do if you're bitten by a rattlesnake, right in the middle there, if you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube. This is very much reminding me, and I think I mentioned this on last week's episode I did with Sarah Presh, the old title apocalypse thing and the weird featured snippets we were getting where it was like, stick your fingers down your throat if somebody's choking. That whole
that's what popped to my mind.
Dodgy medical advice thing that happened. And we're getting it again. Like, these are the opposite. So in the generative AI section in the middle there, you can see that the biggest highlighted thing in the middle of these tweets is if you're bitten by a rattlesnake, you can try these steps. And the word don't should be applied to all of these basically before it. Don't cut the wound or attempt to suck out the venom. Give the victim anything to eat or drink, especially not. You can tell there's a negative there already. It's mad.
I like though that give the victim anything to eat or drink, like when it's phrased like that.
Yeah.
But like, I've been bitten by a rattlesnake.
Eat a rock.
Ghetto, sir.
I can only eat souffle. That is an anti-venom souffle. Yeah.
I mean, that would be bad. Like, so there are some searches you do under stress, right?
Yes.
Like I've used them as examples before for AlsoAsked when we've done research around things like is my dog poisoned?
Yep.
And traditional research tools will show you kind of like all these queries about insurance, but AlsoAsked shows you kind of closer to what people are panic searching, like does my insurance cover this? What does the vet do? Is it expensive?
Yeah.
So and you can see basically when people are Googling around is their dog poisoned, they're essentially working out, can I fix this at home or is this serious enough I need to take to the vet? So if you were to use that overview because you'd just been bitten by a snake and you were panicking and you're immediately then...
Quick, Mark's been bitten. I better give him anything to eat.
Yeah. and put a tourniquet on and apply ice. Like, that's potentially kind of
apply
bad.
ice or heat. Take your
heat.
pick.
Yeah.
Just put a match on the wound. You'll be fine. It's mad. And I think this also reiterates a lot of what we were talked about last month. I think even the month before that. From your experience and even your dad's experience of, I use Bing now instead of Google. I think more and more people are shifting away and using different search engines.
My dad is a trailblazer.
Seriously, yeah.
I'll tell him I mentioned it on the podcast again today.
And he'll be like, what's a podcast?
I don't think he's ever listened to a podcast, actually.
I know my dad listens to history podcasts. I think he has listened to Sequelizers once or twice.
I'll have to find some way to broadcast this on the radio so he'll listen to it.
There is ways of doing
There
that.
you go.
There is like a podcast radio thing.
Like ham radio.
Tune in his wireless thing. But yeah, I think this is general consensus. Again, I apologize for the language some of these tweets are using, but a lot of people are realizing that Google is an absolute trash fire. Why can't I turn it off? AI overview is my new nemesis. That feeling when you figured out Google is garbage, now try DuckDuckGo. Like lots of other people just leaving Google altogether. And I think this is a wider conversation. And funnily enough, a big thing that Google is always talking about is building that trust, right? It's the EEAT side of things. They are losing their space as the authority in search. They are losing their space as the go-to example of like, oh, Google as a verb to Google something rather than to, nobody says to Bing something, nobody says to Brave search something, like that's not a thing. And the fact that it's become
DuckDuckGo could pick up duck it.
Oh yeah. That autocorrect very dodgily. Usually it's the other way around, and you get a lot of duckings when you don't want duckings. But go off and duck it. You'll be like, okay, yeah. And yeah, I think this is kind of the backlash we were expecting. For those of you watching and listening, you're in the SEO industry. If chance enough you're listening to this podcast and watching this podcast, you kind of know what's going on. And we all kind of expected this, right? I think we all kind of saw Google doing the whole I/O thing and being like, everything's fine, AI, don't worry. Like, you don't want to talk about the absolute chaos that's happening on the SERPs right now and all the like independent businesses you're putting out of business and all this kind of... No. AI's great. Don't worry about it. More AI. That's what we need. Don't worry. You'll get more clicks with AI, says Google. I'm like,
So on two things there. Someone asked me, someone texted me last night and said, what do you think like the net overview impression of AI overviews is? Do you think it's positive or negative? And I actually said to them, I don't know. It might well be positive. It's just that the people that obviously feel strongly negatively about it are very vocal about it.
That's almost always true.
It's the same with like reviews. Like generally, unless you ask someone to like leave reviews, and you think about reviews you leave, a lot of times you're motivated because you're like, this is bad and I have to feel like I've done something about it. Yeah. So, and Google's got, billions of users, hundreds of millions of users every day. So I'm wondering, how many of those people are just kind of like, yeah, that's cool. And then it's like this, even, because even if you see 1,000, 10,000 complaints, that's still not representative. So I'm interested. I'm not saying it's positive and I'm not saying it's negative. I'm just saying like and it's just changed as well. And the other thing to, I think, bear in mind is, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, like I think Facebook totally changed how they look.
Oh yeah.
And there was like huge backlash and people were like, this is awful, this is terrible, I'm never using this again. And then like a year later, it's just like...
A year later, like 2 weeks later, everybody's like, oh, I forgot it changed.
Exactly.
Like,
so I am holding out a little bit as to if there will be that curvature. But that said, the technology, and I guess we can talk about this more later, but like the technology Google's using, I don't think it's like their fault that they're getting those kind of results, because that's literally the downside of how that technology works that they've put in place. But, the decision to put it, mainstream Showtime at the top, to me is absolutely bananas. It's like, okay, you can't make that LLM work exactly so it's 100% all the time, but then don't put it at the top of your search engine that everyone's using every day.
I know. And like I said, like Google is a verb for a reason. They have whatever it is, like 96% share in the search space. And I know there was that incorrect stat a little while ago that was like, oh, they've lost a bunch of revenue and oh my god and whatever. Like, no, that's not actually how that works. But I think you're totally right. Like the way that Google are kind of just blindly soldiering on, and we've seen this from some of the stuff we talked about in previous episodes, whether that was the Gomez article, so many other stuff, like talking about, oh, this is the direction that Google is pushing in, that they are now being more corporate and are less focused on the technological side of things. They're less focused on actually like pushing the products in a way that makes things more interesting or valuing the perspective of all their engineers. They fired all of the engineers that had any experience with this kind of stuff because they weren't being the ones that were like, oh yeah, we're going to push the corporation stuff and just be like, how much money can we make from ads? Yes, please. Let's press the big red button that makes us more money. And again, as always, we say on the show, they made, I think it was like $275 billion from ads last year or something like that.
It's a stonking amount.
Astronomical amounts of money. And the amount of money they make from organic side of things is basically nothing compared to the number that they make from ads. And I know I talked about this with Dana DiTomaso a little while ago when we were talking about GA4 and the change from conversions to key events and all that kind of stuff. It's all like building this bigger picture for me of Google kind of not really giving a shit about organic stuff in the grander scheme of things and being so revenue driven as a large corporation to drive like, well, we're going to focus on ads and sorry, you're stuck with key events, which doesn't really make any sense. But conversions are now exclusively a PPC thing. So,
I mean, I've always explained organic to search to people as, in terms of Google's business model, as the reason why Google's popular and the reason they want to maintain organic results. Because I've always said to people, look, they don't make any money from organic results, but the reason Google bangs on about making good quality content and all this is that that's how they get people there to click on their ads. Yeah. Because they trust that the organic results are good. So you can show them ads. If the organic results are bad, like, do people just want to use a pay-per-play search engine? I would say probably not. I had an interesting conversation with Garrett Sussman.
Oh, yeah. Good old Garrett.
Yeah.
Shout out to Garrett.
He was being contrary, which I loved. So I had to be on brand and jump straight in there.
Yeah.
And apologies, Garrett, if I'm kind of mangling the point you were making here. But essentially, we were talking about AI overviews, and he was kind of like, yeah, well, it's no different from search results containing misinformation. And then we talked a little bit about the 2016 election and all the like fake stuff that was posted.
Yeah, when Google were fighting misinformation and that whole push. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, fair. But I guess that, and why I appreciate having that kind of conversation with Garrett was it pushed my thinking forward as to why I think this is a much bigger problem with AI overviews. And the reason I think it's a much bigger problem is that we're all humans, and we understand when we see people posting stuff that's written by a human, we can understand they'll probably have a bias. If I see something on Facebook like a Trumper, or I read a political article, I understand how humans work because I am one, and that there's probably some bias there, or just intentional disinformation in some cases. What I think is dangerous is if you stop people on the street, I reckon 99% will not have any technical knowledge on how AI overviews work.
Yep.
And therefore, they will not know what they need to be careful of. They will not know how and why such errors, like the ones we showed already, can occur. So they're like defenseless, if you like, against misinformation. So that's why I think it's a big deal. And compound that, and this was something, again, we disagreed on a little bit. I said Google's in a position, I think, where generally people trust it as a way to get information.
Agreed.
If you've got something important you need to learn, most people still Google it. Yep. So there is that implicit trust there. So if Google is just suddenly showing you this is the answer, it's from an AI, AI, that's clever, and it's me, it's Google, I think a lot of people are just going to take that on face value.
I think you're totally right. Like the separation of the general public away from us being our little echo chamber, and even more so people who are deep into the LLM stuff and the machine learning stuff, like the vast majority of people have no idea how any of this stuff works, which is true for the entire internet, by the way. Most people don't know how browsers work, how websites work. Everything we do as SEOs, 99% of the population have no clue how any of that stuff works because it doesn't matter to them. Why would they? And I think you're totally right where you get that separation of the biases that come in from, again, something I was talking about with Sarah last week. We were talking about confirmation biases and how literally what you type in to search something will change the featured snippet from the same article to give you opposite answers. So like there was one that was, does coffee cause hypertension? And link between coffee and hypertension gives a, yes, it can increase blood pressure, blah, blah, blah. and then you put no link between coffee and literally just add the word no, and it's like, studies show there is no evidence of got a link between the two. That is then exacerbated when it comes to AI overviews, and I think that's where your point comes in of people just kind of trusting the robots because, that must be very clever technology. Somebody much smarter than me has built this thing, and therefore it must be
When in
correct.
reality, the search engine is doing the correct thing because it's saying, I'm returning results that show you there is no correlation between these two things. Or if you search for correlation, I will show you results where there is a correlation. What it's not doing is answering the question for you.
Exactly.
So you have to understand again how, like you say, the search engine works, so you can critically think about that.
Exactly.
That's something I don't hear much of anymore.
Critical thinking. We've even got former Googler, so shout out to Carl Hendy for highlighting this for us.
Carl's very awesome. Follow him on Twitter.
Absolutely.
He's been doing SEO for a couple of years now. And being kind. It's a while, but he's very good at it.
Yeah. I know Carl is a big fan of Norwich as well, which is always nice. Anyway, Carl highlighted here a post from Scott Jensen, a former Googler, talking about the experience with the AI projects. And for those of you listening and for those of you not watching and stuff, I'll read this little snippet here from Scott. I just left Google last month. The AI projects I was working on were poorly motivated and driven by this mindless panic that as long as it had AI in it, just as I was talking about with the IO stuff, it would be great. This myopia is not something driven by a user need. It is a stone cold panic that they are getting left behind. Certainly felt that way when I was watching. This is my editorializing. Certainly felt that way with IO. It was just like, we're going to do better than OpenAI. We've got all the best AI stuff. Don't worry about everything else. We're the best. Back to Scott. The vision is that there will be a Tony Stark-like Jarvis assistant in your phone that locks you to their ecosystem so hard you'll never leave. That vision is pure catnip. The fear is that they can't afford to let someone else get there first. Again, the escalation of arms with OpenAI and ChatGPT and all that kind of stuff. This exact thing happened 13 years ago with Google+. Remember Google+, everybody? Neither do I. I was there for that fiasco as well. There was a similar hysterical reaction, but to Facebook this time. And Google+.
Do you not remember Google+?
Of course I do. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I remember it from John Mueller's Twitter bio because he still had his Google+ link in there for like 10 years after they shut down Google+.
What about Google Wave?
I know the name. I don't remember Google Wave specifically, but that's an excellent point. Like Google have a track record of you're trying to think of other failed Google products.
I was trying to work out if Circles. I think Circles was part of Google+.
Sure.
You defined
Yes.
Circles.
Yeah.
Your
groups
it was,
of friends.
It was like a advanced version of MySpace top friends.
Yeah, your top 8 kind of thing, but done by Google. And it's really interesting that we don't really talk about. We talk about them being a multi-billion-dollar company who makes hundreds of billions of dollars every year, one of the biggest companies to ever exist in the history of capitalism, and then we don't really talk about the failures and all the projects that are just kind of left by the wayside unless we start talking about Google. Are you breaking stuff here?
Yeah. Carry on.
Mark's breaking the microphone, everybody. And we don't really talk about things apart from like joking about Google Plus and stuff like that. Who gives a shit about Google Plus? Who cared about Google Plus at the time? Like, was that an actual thing people like? It felt very reactionary to me at the time. Exactly as Scott's statement says there, that was a reaction to Facebook. Like, oh God, we need to do social media. We need to be on the cutting edge of stuff. And now a lot of what's happening with the Google, like Gemini and AI on their side of things, feels like a reaction to a lot of the ChatGPT stuff to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can put it better than that. It feels like a move out of fear.
Yeah.
Google Plus was never a thing. They did try and make it a thing. And yeah, the difference for me for this is it's their core product.
Yes. That is
Google,
a big
Google
difference.
was never known for, to be a social network or, anything like that. But search is the DNA of what Google is.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm surprised they've just stuck it right in the middle.
Yeah, that's a really interesting distinction, actually, because I think when it comes to Google Plus, what are you doing with the microphone?
I'm just fixing it. It's fine.
I don't believe you.
It'd be fine.
When it comes to Google Plus, like, that was never going to be the bread and butter of the company, right? Like, they'd already established themselves as a search engine long before they tried to do any social media stuff. But then making this a core part of the search engine side of things, like you said, is putting that, I don't know, fox among the wolves. What's the phrase? The sheep among the wolves kind of thing. Like, you're just chucking it out to the masses of like, yeah, this is what Google is. Like, when you think of Google, you think of search, and you don't necessarily think of Google Drive or Google Meet or all this other like technology that they have and all these other products that they do. Search is by far the number one product you associate with that company, with that brand. And the fact that they're just kind of rolling stuff out and seeing what happens to at the single core part of their business is so fascinating. I think that is what separates this from something like Google Plus, where it's kind of like, I felt like a bit of an experiment and who cares?
Yep.
Like, do you remember who your fifth circle was on Google Plus? Or like, who cares? Nobody remembers that stuff. But like, if it changes the search engine to the point where, as we saw earlier with the reactions here on Twitter, like, people are leaving Google. People are using the search engine less. And that means fewer people are clicking on ads. They're going to see hopefully a dent in revenue that kind of sends a message, because at the end of the day, you kind of have to vote with your wallet in so many ways, right? I think that's how you, as much as we can try and boycott Google and all this kind of stuff, and people try and do this all the time in various degrees of success. But if you actually do stop using Google as your primary search engine and go off and use something else, and a significant amount of people do it, then it might send a message to be like, hey, that was a bit of an early rollout on the old AI overviews, guys. Maybe chill for like another 6 months and let it cook and see how it works. And yeah.
Talking about foxes, goats, hens among things.
Yes.
I think we've got a good example.
We have.
We saw
from ChatGPT 4.0, I believe.
Yeah, earlier in the week. So this was, I thought this was a really fascinating example, and I use this now as an example around LLMs. So and apparently this is like a multicultural riddle. There's various different versions of it. It's essentially, it's quite a famous riddle where there's like a man, fox, and a goat, I think it is, or a fox, a chicken, and a man trying to get across the river, and they can only put two in the boat at once, and it's just like a logic problem of which order you put them in the boat and who you leave, right? So if you go to the new version of ChatGPT 4.0 and say a man and a goat are on one side of a river, they want to cross it, they have a boat, what steps do they need to follow? Write a bullet list with the solution, be as concise as possible. Now obviously a man and a goat with a boat, it's not very difficult. You get in the boat and you go across the river, right?
There's 2 steps to that. Get in the boat, cross the river. There's 2 steps.
And the answer for people not watching the video that ChatGPT 4.0 has given is 1, the man takes the goat across the river.
I mean, I'm solved. Yeah,
we're done.
Sorted.
For 2, the man leaves the goat on the other side and returns alone.
Wait, what? A poor goat.
3, the man crosses the river alone to the original side.
Right, yeah.
4, the man and the goat cross together to the other side, which obviously makes no sense. And I think it's a perfect example because it's demonstrating like an overfitting problem where, from a language model point of view, ChatGPT or GPT-4 has seen this text over and over again. So it's expecting other stuff, and it demonstrates that there is no real logic or reasoning behind what it is generating, because obviously logically it makes no sense.
Yeah, we've got 2 examples here on screen, and I absolutely love the other example that not only does 4 steps but 7 steps and adds in a bunch of other bollocks that it doesn't need to do. So you still get the man takes the goat across the river, same initial step, but then man returns alone, which is a powerful statement in of itself. And then my favorite, step 3, man takes another load, unspecified, for example, hay, across the river. Like you said, it's a perfect example of LLMs taking a problem and being like, well, I need to be as descriptive as possible. I need to give it as much information as I possibly can, just in case. Have you got any unspecified hay on this boat? Like, no, I need a simple solution to this riddle. Bugger off. Man then returns with the goat. Okay. But he's again, we're on the opposite sides here. He then takes the remaining load across the river, so he's back across. Then he returns alone again, and then takes the goat across the river again. It even says again. The goat's gone across the river twice. So the man has taken hay all over the place.
I saw Gary Ish talking about grounding. I don't know if you saw this with LLMs. So he was talking about improving the accuracy of LLMs with grounding, which is essentially you get them to reference like source material, which has facts in it. And while I think that's doable in specific use cases, again, I think maybe he was referencing kind of Google's index and what they've got indexed around queries that they trust that they could ground an AI in it.
Yeah.
But again, immediately it's not what we're seeing with AI overviews.
Yeah.
And I can't see how this technology is going to be suitable for the amount and breadth of queries Google's handling every day.
Yep.
I mean, there's obviously the people that engineered it and put it live are much smarter than me. So
that's the thing, right? Which is exactly what we were saying earlier. Like, much smarter people than us have done it. So do we just blindly trust them? We both just pull him. For listeners out there, we both just pulled a face each.
Yeah.
We did the like, face?
I'm not returning alone.
Mark returns alone. Well, speaking of you, Mark, and ChatGPT, who is Mark Williams-Cook?
Yeah, I thought it'd be a nice question to ask ChatGPT 4.0 because I know the answer.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank God for that.
I am the leading expert on myself.
You are the only Mark Williams-Cook, right? So
exactly.
There you
so
go.
I was like, this should be nice and easy for it.
Let's have a look.
And we got like an okay description. Like, yeah, I work in the SEO industry. I've done some contributions.
You're the founder of AlsoAsked,
director
at Candour, yeah.
It said I'm the director at Candour Digital. Slightly wrong.
Yeah.
I'm based in Norwich. Yeah, like fairly correct. And ChatGPT 4.0 actually citated the sites that it got the information from, and it linked me to Backlink Manager. .io, which is a site I'd never heard of. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'll click on that. So I had a look, and there was like this huge article on me.
For those of you watching, you can see the table of contents on the left-hand side. It is mad.
And immediately that raised my suspicions because I was like, I'm not that interesting that someone's going to write. That's like bigger than famous people's Wikipedia pages, right? And then immediately I'm like, okay, early career achievements. Mark Williams-Cook achieved early success in SEO through various strategies. Keyword research.
Not wrong.
Content optimization. Client management. So that seems like incredibly weird generic statements to make. And then when I actually scrolled down even further, I saw that it said I was the author of a book.
You can see what is the book, Mark Williams-Cook, Mastering SEO Strategies.
Yeah,
who is the author of Mark Williams-Cook, Mastering SEO Strategies?
Which is apparently available on Amazon, which I didn't know about.
I mean, you did start off with like Amazon affiliate stuff, so maybe that's your. You need to get back in the game, mate. On selling on Amazon.
I checked, and I'm not selling a book on Amazon. But this
as far
again,
as you know.
this highlighted, right? Again, another major problem for me that's going to crop up with AI overviews, which is, in my opinion, at the moment, ChatGPT 4.0 outperforms the Google like conversational
Agreed,
AI,
yeah.
right? And already, ChatGPT is, for its AI-generated answers, sourcing AI-generated answers which are incorrect.
Yeah.
And we know the web is very quickly filling up with more AI-generated slop. I saw someone call it slop the other day, which was a mix between spam and something else.
Crap.
It's quite clever. Yeah. Anyway, and I think we're going to see a whole new era of kind of like black hat SEO and manipulating AI search overviews by this kind of technique.
This is the thing we talked about. It's the Ouroboros snake eating its own tail technology thing where I can't remember who originally posed the question. I don't know if there is a single source necessarily, but I think a lot of us were thinking like, cool, if AI overview stuff is pulling from existing content and the existing content is generated by people using ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot and whatever else, then AI stuff is referencing other AI stuff. So no human has been involved in this process for quite a few steps back in that. So like, the person who originally programmed each of those things are then referencing each other. And it's like this weird thing where you've got robots talking about other robots and there's been no human contribution at all for years in some cases.
So a thought I'd kind of like to leave that on is I worry outside of search whether we're kind of poisoning our own knowledge well.
Oh, interesting.
In that if the amount of AI content eventually is 100 times that of human content.
Which it could be, because it's going to be done so quickly at scale, right? Like, yeah.
How are we going to keep discerning between them? Like, what's real correct information and what isn't? Because we've already seen science papers written with LLMs
Yep.
that, you know, have mentioned, you know, like, I can't do this, I'm a large language model type thing. And I'm just wondering whether we're like creeping in our own disinformation, which we won't be able to pick out. And we're doing it at such a scale.
Weirdly enough, I think that kind of piggybacks and is kind of the other side of the coin of the site reputation abuse stuff, where if larger publishers, if reputable sources, if big sites that have impact, especially in things like medical stuff and all this kind of things, start using this process, and then we're using them as sources for other things, like a scientific article, like a post on, I don't know, Healthline or Mayo Clinic or whatever, like these big sites that rank really well for a lot of YMYL search terms, then we use that as a reference of like, oh, I heard this on this website, and you refer to that in your content. You do an external link to, you know, show that you're checking your sources and you're being honest about your content. You're creating good content, doing all the usual stuff, the pros and the cons that Google recommend and all that kind of stuff. But then you don't know if that's actually right, but just because you saw it on a site that you think is reputable. Because again, coming back to the example last week, the thing I was just talking about with Sarah was that coffee hypertension thing was on Mayo Clinic. I was like, that's one of the most like highly ranking medical sites in the world for English language speakers. So you would assume they would get it right. And you can get two contradicting pieces of information on a featured snippet, then extrapolate that by creating the content at scale, having the AI referencing other AI created content, and you're in an absolute storm of incorrect information that seems reputable because of its source. And there's no way for us as humans to verify that source, because you can just stick a person's name on an article and be like, it was written by Dr. Jack Chambers Ward. Yeah, totally. Because, and when we talk about this, when it comes to like the AAT side of things as well, like obviously it's not as simple as, and again, Gary from Google was talking about this, it's not as simple as just creating a bio page and being like, here's an author, they know what they're talking about. But also, how do you connect? How do you verify that I have a degree in physics with astrophysics? I've not published my degree anywhere. There's not a photo of my certificate with my degree in there anywhere. Like, there's no way of knowing that for sure. I could just say I'm Dr. Jack Chambers Ward from this university you've probably never heard of. And
that's what your CV said.
Exactly, yeah. You've never seen my CV. We've had this conversation before. Weirdly enough, they updated the article, Backlink Manager IO. I don't want to say credit to them, because let's not give them credit. It is much better, much shorter. You can see the table of contents there. It's much more concise and easy to read.
Holy smokes.
They still call us Candour Digital, unfortunately. But they do link to us a few times, which is nice. That's a link to AlsoAsked as well, which is nice.
Are they trying to like dissuade any burns by giving us some links? Like,
maybe.
Give them some links. That'll calm them down.
They saw your call out on Twitter and were like, whoa, hold on a minute.
The
link to
importance of Norwich
AlsoAsked
in Mark's career.
I mean, you live in Norwich?
Interesting.
I'll give you the link later on. You can have a look, mate, in all its gory details. It features all of your appearances on the other podcasts. Not this podcast. Not the one that you started at the agency you're a director of. No. It features all of your guest appearances and stuff. Cheeky bastards.
Nice.
Give us a link. Give the podcast a link. Anyway, the good news is you can actually get rid of the AI overview stuff with a couple of different techniques. There is the web filter side of things, which Google basically did a tweet of like, we understand that a lot of people are quite angry and want to use purely text-based functions for their search engines. It's like, yeah, that's most people. And they tried to make it sound like they're doing us all a big favor and being very diplomatic about it, when really we're not apologizing, but you can get away with it if you go off and click on
I felt like they tried to bundle the deal with the other helpful stuff.
Yeah.
They got some nice rich snippet stuff. It's like, no, we're going to take all that out because you said you don't like this one thing.
Yeah. And you can go to the more drop down and then click web, and you get a web filter.
That screams of I'm taking my toys and going home. Like, if you don't want my AI overview, you can't play with my knowledge graph or my PAAs.
You got to click on more first. You got to use a drop down box.
You can't have a featured snippet. You can just have 10 blue links and like it.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Pretty much. So this will turn off a lot of the SERP features and all that kind of stuff in AI Overview. And shout out to Andrew Optimizy, who former guest on the show, who has also done a little Chrome extension that does the same thing. And you can just add it to your Chrome. It's now officially on the Chrome Web Store, so you can go and add it there very easily, whatever Chromium-based browser you're using.
All of them now, basically.
Yeah, pretty much all of them. And it gets rid of all the SERP features. It declutters the SERPs and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, gets rid of AI Overview, which is very, very nice.
Cool. So you don't have to do it like every time. You just click and it will just change your search.
You can just have it running in the background.
Andrew.
Shout out to Optimizy.
He saw an opportunity there, didn't he?
Definitely, yeah. Ignoring the fact that, like, because I feel like you wouldn't necessarily know, again, how public is the web filter side of things. Like, but again, because we're in the echo chamber, because we're in the industry, blah, 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 we're aware of it. But I think a lot of people using that will be like, well, this is the SERPs now, I guess. I probably wouldn't use the word SERPs. This is the search engine results now. I don't know what else I can do, but maybe we can spread the good word of Optimizy search and help people clear out their SERPs and declutter the results pages a little bit.
It's Google enough.
It's Google enough, indeed. Well, thank you for joining us, folks. If you've joined us live on LinkedIn, we will sporadically do this on LinkedIn, right, Mark?
Yeah, why not?
Mark told me about this about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, something like that. He was like, yeah, let's go. Do you fancy doing a live on LinkedIn? I was like, I remember that being a massive pain in the arse last time, Mark. And you're like, yeah, let's go for it.
It'll be fine.
It's already on. I've tagged you. It's like, shit. I can't say no now. It's gone out to your followers. But yeah, we will be doing live stuff. We're planning to do it on other platforms as well. So keep an eye on our Twitter, keep an eye on LinkedIn. We might even go live on YouTube a couple of times potentially as well. We're kind of experimenting with a few different platforms and different ways of doing the podcast live. And then this will also be on our YouTube channel, on the usual places where you listen to podcasts and all that kind of stuff. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, please do. You can subscribe on Spotify and follow us there. You can subscribe to the Candour Agency YouTube channel. That's got all the latest of the season 3, which is the last 20 episodes of the podcast on there in one long playlist. And yeah, find us wherever you listen to podcasts, basically, whether that's, I use an app called Podcast Addict personally, but I know a lot of people use Apple Podcasts and all kinds of other stuff. We're on anything, basically. You can find us in either audio or video format wherever you search for podcasts. And we'll be back next month. We like to do these little monthly recaps, kind of summarizing what we do in the newsletter and core updates. Please do go and check out coreupdates.com. Not a sponsor, but I'll give it a quick cheeky shout out anyway. And Mark and I highlight the latest in SEO news. You get the latest episode of the podcast included in there. You get all of your unsolicited SEO tips throughout the week. Isn't that right?
Solicited, yeah. You sign up.
Officially solicited because you signed up with your email address. And you get, I believe it's 8 of the latest most important SEO news articles and bits.
It normally works out about
give or
8.
take.
Yeah, it's not specifically 8, but it tends to be there's like 8 things that happen during the week normally. That's
eight
the
important
cadence.
things, yeah.
It's the cadence of the industry.
And if you hadn't already guessed, we're recording this on a Wednesday. The Monday one was all about AI overviews. And you can go and check out previous issues and stuff like that. Go to coreupdates.com. You can check it out there and sign up there as well. Like I said, subscribe, like all the usual good YouTube stuff if you're watching later on YouTube. And we'll be back next month with another episode. But until then, I'll be back with plenty of interviews. I've got Jonas Sickler, I've got Shonda Nicole, I've got all kinds of awesome guests coming up over the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that all throughout the end of May and into June 2024.